What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to bring you guys my free draft for the upcoming Game Week 19. So to say the past couple of days, or maybe just yesterday, was a roller coaster, probably an understatement. Recorded the team selection, uploaded it, and as I was uploading it to YouTube, the postponement news came out over on Twitter, and obviously that video is now useless. So now I'm sitting here having to record this for the second time because the audio on my first take was completely ruined, so he's sitting here for the second time talking about my free draft. So hopefully you guys do enjoy this video after all these kind of problems, but in this specific video I'm going to first talk to you guys about the postponement news, and then I'm going to be giving you guys a fixture analysis that I think will be super helpful if you guys are planning to use the free chip. So personally, I think now what I would do is just simply relax, watch this video, but then take time off to go enjoy this festive period with your family, because from now till that Sunday, remember the deadline for Game Week 19 is going to happen on Boxing Day Sunday, a morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you guys are around the world. But from now till then, I am expecting some more news to come about, and therefore I think the optimum strategy is to have a free draft in the back of your pocket, but also a transfer plan that you can maybe do. Then come this Game Week 19 deadline, you guys can kind of whip out whichever one you want, depending on what scenario is going to be happening between now and then. And then hopefully blank Game Week 19 can be a good game week for you. So as I mentioned in this video, news about the deadlines, then a fixture analysis, and then finally the free draft. So that's something you guys are interested in. Sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So the news that dropped yesterday was that two fixtures were going to be postponed in Game Week 19. The first one was going to be Liverpool versus Leeds, which now extends the deadline about 2 hours. So if you guys were planning for that Liverpool Leeds deadline stream, don't worry about that. It's going to be now 2 hours later. And then also the other game was going to be Watford versus Wolves. So Watford versus Wolves, I think, has less implications for our own FPL teams. But if you guys do own a Dennis, a Josh King, that could be quite an annoyance for you. I know the top 1000 template, which we created yesterday, did have both of those two assets in the template. So that's going to be a massive implication for them, but maybe not for you and your own team. But in terms of the Liverpool versus Leeds game, massive implications there. All of us kind of own Trent, Jota, Salah, so I think because all of us do own him, we might be in a similar boat, but it's a little bit annoying that they are missing out on a great fixture. But as I mentioned in the introduction, I am expecting at least one more postponement to happen between now and that Sunday deadline, so please pay attention to that, and your plan might be actually changing because of those future postponements. But as of now, the only information that we do have is that the Liverpool Leeds game's off, and then also the Watford vs Wolves game. But now going on to the Game Week 19 fixtures, and I always like to do this whenever it's kind of a normal game week. I have a predictor league over on Superbrew, but in a week that you're going to use the free hit, I think it's even more important because as you're only using the team for one game week, you want to kind of capitalize on that and get the best fixtures or the best players in those fixtures that theoretically should score you the most points. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be going through each fixture, kind of telling you if I would avoid it or go for it, and which side of the fixture I think is more favorable. So the first one, Burnley versus Everton. I'm not going to be touching this fixture on a free hit for two reasons. The first one is I think this game is going to be relatively boring. I think Burnley, Everton, both these sides aren't playing that well at the current moment. This might be an absolute goal fest, but I don't think so. I think it's going to be a really close win or maybe a draw. And the second reason is that Everton currently have 6 players out who have tested positive, and therefore that squad is looking quite thin, and therefore I think this game might actually be postponed. I think if you had to do a prediction on which game was most likely to be postponed in Game Week 19, besides the others that have already been, I think that Everton-Burnley is the perfect example of that, and therefore I wouldn't be touching this on a free hit. But then we kind of go on a run of fixtures that I would potentially look at, or actually definitely. Man City vs Leicester is definitely one that I would actually consider from an attacking and a defensive point of view. Leicester side midweek in the Carabao Cup, kind of already losing to Liverpool's B team, and they were playing their A team. So I do think that Leicester side is not in the best of form, and even this Premier League season haven't been defending or attacking that well as well. I think I would slightly favour Leicester from an attacking point of view to a defensive point of view, but from Man City, I think that's a perfect way to capitalise on some defensive and some attacking returns. Another thing to note with Leicester is that Jamie Vardy, their kind of star striker, might actually be missing this fixture after picking up a knock late into that Carabao Cup game. So Man City fixtures, great asset to kind of go for. The next one's even better though, Arsenal versus Norwich. In terms of my predictions, I think that Arsenal have the highest chance of scoring multiple goals in Game Week 19, and that's why I do favour their attack slightly more than the defence. And the pure reason for that is that I think in this game week, we've got to target kind of goals, and I think their midfielders and forwards provide the perfect opportunity for that. So kind of no-brainer there. Any side that faces Norwich is usually a side to go for. We then move on to Spurs vs Crystal Palace. Now, I don't think there's going to be a ton of goals in this one. I think there might be goals for either side, and therefore I'm not going for defenses of either of them. But I do think that Son and Kane could be nice little options, because if Spurs do score, I think that those two assets will be involved. Spurs under Conte are kind of finally finding their feet, some relatively good form over these past couple game weeks, and therefore I think Spurs are a side to go for, especially their attackers. We then take a kind of a break from these good fixtures. West Ham, Southampton, super kind of close to call. I do think West Ham are more favoured than Southampton, but this game should be quite low scoring, and with Antonio potentially out after testing positive a week ago, I might not be going for anyone besides maybe a Jared Bowen. Stevie G's Aston Villa then take on Chelsea. Chelsea a side that aren't playing that well at the current moment, but I do think this might be quite a close game. Aston Villa have been really attacking, so you might not even be considering those Chelsea assets on a free hit, but I think this game could kind of go either way. I do favour Chelsea obviously, but I think in terms of the clean sheets and the attacking returns, I don't think I'll be looking at too many of their options. And now finally the fixture for Sunday, Boxing Day, is going to be Brighton vs Brentford. I think this game is going to be quite a boring one, to be honest. Not many goals. I think a clean sheet could be for both of them or either of them. And that's why I think this game is too hard to call unless you guys want to go for some budget options. I think the two games to target for budget options are going to be West Ham, Southampton, and then Brighton vs Brentford. And the last fixture for Game Week 19 happening on Monday evening, I've seen some concerns there because it's so late on. We might only get news of a postponement relatively late into the game week, and therefore there might be some concern there, but I do think the concern is worth it because United do take on Newcastle, and Newcastle have been very poor this Premier League season. The only thing that hinders me from that United attack is that prior to their kind of testing positive and their postponements, they were not playing that well, beating Norwich 1-0 with the penalty, and then I think they also beat their prior team only 1-0, so not really great form from an attacking point of view, but I think the defense looks quite solid under their new manager, and therefore I think both the attack and the defense could yield points, but I do favour the defense of United. So now that we've gone over the fixtures, and you guys can do this as well, post them in the comments down below which fixture you think's the best. You can even post your score predictions down below. Always like to see what other people are kind of thinking. But now that we've done the fixture analysis, let's do the team reveal or the free hit draft reveal. I'm going to start off with some talking points relating to the bench, because this week on a free hit, I do think you guys should have 3 playing options on your bench, just because the risk of postponements or future postponements coming up that we might not be able to prepare for. And that's why you guys can see I've got 3 potential starters. There might be some concerns over some rotation, but I will address that when I talk about the different players. So starting off with my second goalkeeper, I've gone for Fernandes from Brentford. I wanted to go for Sanchez, but I couldn't afford Broja at 5.1 million, and that's why Fernandes provides a nice little cheap option at 4.5 million. And against Brighton, as I mentioned with the fixtures, both of these two sides could potentially get a clean sheet. Delot or Delo from United, apologies for mispronouncing that name, but at 4.5 million, great entry into that United defense, great fixtures well against Newcastle. My only concern is potential rotation for him, as I don't exactly know the current fitness update on him. Sufal is another option that could have some rotation. I don't exactly know the situation with Ben Johnson at that fullback slot. So I mean, Sufal has the potential to start, might not, but against Southampton, chance of a clean sheet might be a little bit contradictory there, because I do own Broja in that third slot. So both these two assets do play against each other, but because the game is so close and we need some budget entries, I do think these two players are fine to have on your bench. But that's enough of the bench. Kind of the bench is the most boring part of any free hit draft usually, but I think this week it might be a little bit more exciting just because of the risk of those postponements. But going on to the starting 11, and I have opted for a 3-5-2 just because the midfield options from a value point of view, I think provide massive value, especially at that kind of budget entry range. But starting off with the defense, I've gone for David De Gea and Ben White. Probably the first kind of talking point that you guys might disagree with me. You could opt for maybe a Ramsdale and a Delo if you guys prefer that. But I just think De Gea and Ben White is a relatively solid selection, and I think both these two players will definitely play. The reason I didn't go for White and Ramsdale is because I favoured the attack of Arsenal against Norwich, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on when we cover the midfield. So De Gea, Ben White, great options, high potential for a clean sheet, and let's just hope that they do end up with some returns. But then finalizing our defense is going to be a double up of the Man City assets, Cancelo and Diaz. So Cancelo and Diaz offer the perfect kind of combination of really good defensive stats and a relatively okay fixture. I think that Man City's defense is the best in the Prem at the moment, and therefore I trust these assets the most to get me a clean sheet. Now I think on any free hit game week, you got to favor Man City assets just because from a ceiling point of view, absolutely massive high ceiling for these assets, and therefore I've gone for the defense over the double up in attack just because there usually is some rotation and some pep roulette. But Diaz and Cancelo, not only do they offer some defensive returns, but also from an attacking point of view, they have some attacking threat. Cancelo, self-explanatory there, why he has that attacking threat from that wing-back or full-back position. But Diaz has also occasionally got some threat from those set pieces. But now moving on to our Power 5 midfield, it might not be a Power 5 in terms of price, but I think in terms of punch, these assets have some massive threat going forward. I'm going to start off with the double up in the Arsenal attack. I've opted for 2 midfielders instead of a Lacazette just because Martinelli and Saka, even though they do come in cheaper, I do think they provide more threat than Lacazette does. And not only are they cheaper, but I think, as I said, better threat there, so kind of a no-brainer for me. And both these 2 assets have the form, and I think they definitely will play in the starting 11 against Norwich. We then go on to Jared Bowen, the only player I said I would start in that West Ham versus Southampton game. A little bit of concerns about his fitness potentially. He might have actually missed the Carabao Cup game after a late injury test, so I don't exactly know the update on him. But if he is fit and ready to play against Southampton, I do really favour him because he seems to be on some great form. Now, Phil Foden does still remain in my free hit side, even though there might be some rotation concerns. I just think after getting the new haircut, that's quite a bold move to do. I don't think that Pep would have favoured that if he wasn't going to start, because that might be too much added to those behavioural concerns. So I do think Phil Foden will play. I do hope he does, because I think against Leicester, a side that have been really poor defensively this season, Phil Foden could have an absolute field day at home. And then kind of our final double up in the team, I've gone for Son and Kane just because you have enough value without a Mo Salah, without a Trent to split the value, and therefore Kane, although he is quite expensive, might not be worth it. I think it's worth taking a punt on him at home against Crystal Palace. Now I know this might be quite rich considering that he only scored his 2nd goal this Premier League season against Liverpool last week, but I do think maybe that'll be a confidence booster, and I definitely would have Son, and therefore I'm just complimenting him with Harry Kane. I mentioned this in the kind of a fixture analysis that if Spurs do score, I'm expecting Kane or Son to be involved. Probably Son more than Kane, but as I said, massive value, so you guys can afford the English striker. But then finally, CR7 himself, Cristiano Ronaldo, will be our captain against Newcastle. I mentioned Newcastle's form not being that great. United's form isn't that great either, but I do think from a potential point of view, I'd rather go with Ronaldo as I think he's a secure option, but I do also like the Arsenal midfielders against Norwich. I think CR7 will definitely play. There were some concerns about his positive test, but he was back training this midweek. So I do think he'll start in the starting 11, and therefore against Newcastle, as I mentioned, not great. I think he should potentially at least get a goal. So overall, I really like this team structure. I think the Game Week 19 free hit kind of picks itself. You want to triple up with Man City, a triple up with Norwich United, are going to have Son or Kane. But I have seen some variation over on FPL Twitter, so I do hope if we do have to use the free hit, there might be some variance there, and it's not going to be too template at the end of the day. But post your free hit squads down below, guys. Always I'm interested to see what you guys are picking. There might be some massive differentials that I haven't even considered. That will be great to kind of look at, and maybe I'll include those in my own free hit draft for Game Week 19. But this is your wrap the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like if you did, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I will be hopefully recording the team selection either today or tomorrow on Christmas Day. Might just be one of those situations because I potentially am traveling on Sunday and therefore will miss the deadline stream for Game Week 19. But hopefully you guys have been enjoying the content, and as I said, just enjoy this festive period, and come Sunday morning we can assess the situation then. But I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.